Hello everybody and welcome to Edexcel A-Level French, and today we're going to be going through this textbook chapter by chapter. Now here are the contents of the textbook. You have theme 1, les changements de la société française. Theme 2, la culture politique et artistique dans les pays francophones. Theme 3, l'immigration et la société multiculturelle française. And theme 4, l'occupation et la résistance. And you also have a number of units in this textbook. You have Unit 1, Unit 1, les changements dans les structures familiales. Unit 2, l'éducation. Unit 3, le monde du travail. Unit 4, la musique. Unit 5, la média. Unit 6, le festival et les traditions. Then you have littérature et film, a number of movies and books, films and books related to literature and cinema, literary works. And then you have Unit 7, l'impact positif de l'immigration en France. Unit 8, les défis de l'immigration et de l'intégration en France. Unit 9, l'extrême droite. Then you have recherche personnelle et présentation. And then you have Unit 10, la France occupée. Then you have Unit 11, le régime de Vichy. Then Unit 12, la résistance. And then you have thème 1 et 2, revisiter. Unit 13, approfondissement. So basically, in this textbook, you have got 4 themes and 13 units to be covered within 2 years of Edexcel A-Level French. And now, let's go through this textbook chapter by chapter. Now, you have 4 themes, and this is for AS and A-Level French. And then paper 1 for the AS exam is listening, reading and translation, and is 64 marks, 1 hour and 45 minutes long. And paper 2 is written response to works and translation, 60 marks, 1 hour and 40 minutes. Paper 3 is speaking, 72 marks, 27 to 30 minutes. And then for the A-Level exam, you have paper 1, which is listening, reading and translation, 80 marks, 2 hours. Paper 2, which is written response to works and translation, 120 marks, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And paper 3, speaking, 72 marks, 21 to 23 minutes. And then you have literary texts and films. And here's the summary of the 3 papers at AS and A-Level in French for Edexcel. Now, how the units and subunits work. And Unit 13 is a recap of all 12 units. In total there's 13 units, but 12 units are main, and 1 unit is recap of all units. So, you have Unit 1, les changements dans les structures familiales. And then you have 1.1, la structure de la famille en France. l'institution du mariage, les relations en famille. So I repeat, you have 1.1, la structure de la famille en France. 1.2, l'institution du mariage. 1.3, les relations en famille. Now, you have theme objectives, grammar objectives, and strategy objectives. Theme objectives, color-coded in green. Grammar objectives, color-coded in blue. Strategy objectives, color-coded in pink. Now, let's work through this textbook. Et maintenant, on va lire un texte sur l'évolution de la famille. L'institution de la famille en France connaît une vraie évolution. On voit que la situation a commencé à évoluer dans les années 1960. À partir de cette époque, se développent de nouvelles structures familiales. La structure contemporaine la plus représentée en France aujourd'hui est la famille monoparentale. Le facteur le plus important dans cette évolution est l'augmentation du nombre de divorces. On constate que la forme de la famille, qui est en deuxième position sur l'échelle, est la famille recomposée. Elle partage un facteur en commun avec la précédente, car les parents se séparent ou un des parents vit avec un nouveau ou une nouvelle partenaire. En 2006, 780,000 enfants vivaient dans une famille recomposée. Le troisième type de famille qu'on appelle nouveau est la famille homoparentale, où les enfants vivent avec un couple du même sexe. Il est très difficile de déterminer la proportion exacte de la population française dans cette situation familiale. La naissance de ce type de famille est le résultat de l'évolution des mœurs. Léa, 16 ans, vit depuis le divorce de ses parents une semaine sur deux avec son père et l'autre avec sa mère. Elle témoigne de cette situation. Je m'appelle Léa et je suis en première au lycée. Mes parents se sont séparés quand j'avais 4 ans. Mon père s'est mis avec une femme et ma mère également s'est mise avec une femme. Et voilà tout. Pour moi, ce n'est pas un problème d'avoir deux belles-mères. And here are some exercises related to the text. Now, let's work through this textbook little by little, chapter by chapter. I might not read every single text in this book, but I'll go through what's on each page in a summary. Now, you have another text here. Le mariage pour les couples de même sexe. Marié, oui, et après. And then you see a lot of important information in this text over here, written by 3 different people in 3 different sections. I'm not going to read it all out, but I'll just show you what it says on the screen. And then let's try and work on this exercise 3B. Below is what Jean Marais also said about the future of marriage. Translated into English. Pay attention to the use of both future tenses. Ce que Jean Marais pense, and that means what Jean-Marie thinks. Les gens continueront à se marier à l'avenir. People will continue to get married in the future. Beaucoup de gens vont vouloir une cérémonie civile à la mairie et une cérémonie grandiose à l'église. Lots of people will want a civil ceremony at the town hall and a big ceremony at the church. Les couples vont décider. Actually, this section, beaucoup de gens vont vouloir, means lots of people are going to want. So let's start again. Ce que Jean-Marie pense. What Jean-Marie thinks. Les gens continueront à se marier à l'avenir. People will continue to get married in the future. Beaucoup de gens vont vouloir une cérémonie civile à la mairie et une cérémonie grandiose à l'église. Lots of people are going to want a civil ceremony at the town hall and a big ceremony at the church. Les couples vont décider de se marier parce qu'ils veulent un engagement plus fort. The couples are going to decide to get married because they want a stronger engagement. Les préparatifs du mariage prendront beaucoup de temps et les femmes voudront une robe de mariée blanche et une alliance. The preparatives of marriage will take a lot of time, and the brides will want a white dress and a ring. Now, that translation was a mixture of easy and difficult, because there were some words and sentences that I'm sure we're familiar of, and some other words and phrases that we're not familiar with yet. But we can get familiar with it as we go through the textbook by doing different translations to practice. Now, here's another text, and the title is Les familles recomposées, and subtitles you have Une situation complexe, l'enfant union, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Now, let's go through this book. Now, at the end of each unit, you have a list of vocabulary over there, which I'll also show. Not for too long, though, but you can easily press pause to zoom in and read all vocabulary, just like that. And then you have Unité de l'éducation, and then 2.1, l'enseignement en France, 2.2, aïe aïe aïe, l'école me stresse. 2.3, je m'oriente vers l'enseignement supérieur. 2.4, de l'enseignement au boulot. And then you have color-coded theme, grammar and strategy objectives in green, blue and pink. Now, look at this text. De la maternelle au lycée. le système éducatif français, l'école primaire, le collège, le lycée. You have 3 different subheadings in that text. And if you want, you can press pause and zoom in to read each text that I present in this video, but it's up to you whether you'd like to do that. I'm not going to go through it all in detail in this video right now, because I've got a lot to go through with you all today. And then I'm going to find another translation we can all do to practice. Now, here's another text which you can go through in more detail in your own time. Now, exercise 5. Translate the following text into English. Mathilde, déçue du lycée général, Mathilde s'est finalement décidée. Disappointed about general school, Mathilde has finally decided. But that doesn't make sense in English. That sentence seems to be quite complicated. Maybe it's Mathilde has finally decided, disappointed of general school. Maybe that makes more sense in English. Elle va quitter la voie générale pour un lycée professionnel. She is going to quit the general view for a professional job. Un choix qui ne manquera certainement pas d'étonner certains de ses compagnes. A choice which will not certainly lack atoning certain of her friends. Souvent considérée à tort comme synonyme d'échec et de relégation, la voie professionnelle est mal vue, une injustice que veut réparer Mathilde. Often considered as a synonym of check and relegation, the professional view is bad view, an injustice that wants to repair Mathilde, ayant passé une année de seconde extrêmement stressante où elle n'est pas simplement pas arrivée à s'y retrouver, elle est sûre de la cohérence de son choix. Having spent a second year extremely stressing, where she isn't simply arriving there to meet, she is sure of the coherence of her choice. Now, let's move on to the next topic. Right. Look at this text over here. It's called Université ou Grande École. Les grandes écoles, les universités. So you can press pause and read through this text in more detail if you want. But otherwise, let's move on to the next translation task. Higher education in France. L'enseignement supérieur en France regroupe les formations postérieures au baccalauréat. Superior teaching in France regroups the posterior formations at the baccalauréat. Ceux qui s'intéressent ont le choix entre soit une université, soit une grande école. Those who are interested in the choice between university or a big school. Contrairement aux universités dans d'autres pays, dont la Grande-Bretagne, les universités françaises accueillent tous les bacheliers sans sélection préalable, ce qui entraîne des problèmes. Contrarily, at universities in other countries, of which Great Britain, French universities welcome all the bachelors without a prealable selection. Those who train some problems. Offrant des formations très diversifiées, elles restent quand même populaires. Offering very diverse formations, they stay popular quite often. L'entrée s'y faisant par concours, les grandes écoles accueillent beaucoup moins d'étudiants et sont souvent considérés supérieurs aux universités. The entry over there for courses, the big schools welcome lots of less students and are often considered superior to universities. Now, I don't know if I'm translating any of these texts correctly or not, because I'm not a native speaker of French. I'm just learning the language out of interest. However, I do know that I'm making a good effort. At least I'm trying to translate these texts into English, where there's exercises to do so. They're just short ones, not long ones. Au boulot. Des formations d'un an. Les formations par apprentissage après le baccalauréat. Now, let's move on to the next translation. Now, this is a bit more challenging. Traduisez ce passage en français. With their exams coming up, many students are starting to think about what they will do after they have taken them. Avec leur examen viennent beaucoup d'élèves pensent avec leurs examens approchent vite, beaucoup d'élèves commencent à penser sur avec leurs examens approchent plus vite, beaucoup d'élèves commencent à penser ce qu'ils vont faire après ils ont écrit leur. There, some will continue their studies. There, vont continuer leurs études. Others may want to stop them. Les autres vont les autres voudront arrêter leur. Whatever route they are planning to take, most of them will be thinking about their future career, how to prepare themselves for professional life. Ce quelle route ils entendent à faire, plus de l'heure vont se penser sur leur travail à l'avenir, comment préparer leur pour la vie professionnelle. There's no need for them to worry, as there are many ways to facilitate the transition from education to the working world. Il n'y a pas la nécessité pour l'heure à s'inquiéter, comme il y a beaucoup de manières à faciliter la transition de l'éducation au monde du travail. Quelles qualifications ils vont avoir. Now that was a challenging translation from English to French. The previous translation texts were from French to English, but this was more challenging from English to French. You do get different translation texts like that. And here are the vocabulary for this unit. Now, Unit 3. Le monde du travail. L'équilibre travail-vie personnel, ça marche. 3.1. Les grèves et les français. International. 3.2. L'égalité homme-femme au travail, un mythe ou une réalité. 3.3. Okay, and then you have the objectives here. Now, have a look at these different texts. So, they're short texts. I'm not going to read them all out. I'll just present them to you on the screen. Right. Now you have another translation to do, and it's from French to English. Work and well-being. Dans notre société de l'accomplissement personnel, le travail est devenu l'une des principales raisons pour le bien-être, conforme le sociologue Vincent de Golejac. In our society of personal accomplishment, work has become one of the main reasons for well-being, confirming the sociologue of Vincent de Golejac. Notre conception du travail est, nos jours, intimement liée à une notion d'enrichissement personnel. Our conception of work is nowadays intimely led to a notion enriching personal. Dans la réalité, ce qu'un employé attend d'un salarié, ce n'est pas qu'il se fasse plaisir, mais qu'il contribue à la rentabilité de son affaire, l'un n'étant pas toujours compatible avec l'autre. In reality, each employer attends a salary. It's not making pleasure, but it contributes to the rentability of his affair. One not always being compatible with the other. Now, that was also quite complicated, but I had to go at it anyway. Now, look at this text. Encyclopédie en ligne, la France est un pays de grévistes. Look at it. There we go. And then, traduisez le texte suivant en français. What a year of strikes. Ce quelle année de grève. Everybody has a right to strike, but it causes many problems for others. Tout le monde a la voix de gréver, mais cause beaucoup de problèmes pour les autres. There were strikes in the past. Il y avait des grèves au passé. They have always existed. Ils ont existé tout le temps. Without strikes, there wouldn't be any progress. Sans les grèves, il n'y aura pas de progression. Sometimes a strike is a real problem for everybody, and it can be the fault of the employers. Souvent, une grève est un vrai problème pour tout le monde, et ce sera la faute des employés. Ce n'est pas souvent une question de principal, mais d'argent. If there is a public transport strike, it can be a nightmare for the passengers. S'il y a une grève de transport en commun, il sera un cauchemar pour les passagers. Now, let's move on. Look at this. Être une femme. Premier facteur de discrimination au travail en France. Right. Now, let's translate this text into English. Positive discrimination. La discrimination positive est une question qui fait toujours débat aujourd'hui. Positive discrimination is a question of always doing debate today. C'est le fait d'avantager de façon passagère certains groupes de personnes victimes de discrimination systematique. It is the fact of advantaging from the passenger way certain groups of people victims of discrimination, systematic discrimination. Les distinctions peuvent être de nature raciale ou être fondées sur le sexe ou la religion. Par exemple, ce concept a été créé afin de rétablir un équilibre. Selon un sondage, 67% des personnes interrogées estiment que la discrimination positive ne serait pas une bonne chose contre 29% qui croient le contraire. The distinctions can be of racial nature, were being funded on the sex or the religion. For example, this concept of being created at the end of re-establishing an equilibrium. According to a survey, 67% of people interrogated estimating that positive discrimination wouldn't be a good thing, against 29% who believe the contrary. Now, here's vocabulary for this unit. Now, unit 4, la musique. 4.1, la musique francophone. 4.2, les tendances musicales. 4.3, l'influence de la musique. Then you have the objectives. Look at this text. La radio française, les chanteurs d'antan, la loi Toubon, peur de nouveaux talents francophones. Right. Then you have another passage to translate. And instead of reading it in both languages, I'll just do the translations. Until music passion is after having visited India, that the guitarist, singer, the Quebecan guitarist, singer, Philemon Simon, has really discovered his creation of singing, and the text traversed of vulnerability, authenticity that he has written himself after having made earning more prices. Traveling in aim, it is soon reparted to Cuba, this time, countries of which shalloped rhythms of jazz often inspired to go out in a new album in returning to Montreal. Now that was a challenge, in my opinion. I'll see if I can find any more ones to do with you all. Here's another text. Another text. Now, I think I'll finish doing translations with you all for now, but I'll just show you which translations you can do in your own time. You can do the rest of the translations that I show you in your own time if you want to. But this one, exercise 5, page 71, unité 4, la musique, traduisez ce passage en français. So it's written in English, you just need to translate it into French. And then here's the vocabulary for unit 4 of music. Now, unit 5, the media, and the subheadings. La liberté d'expression en France, où en sont les limites? Here's the next translation you can do on page 77, Unit 5, Les Médias, Reporters Without Borders. Now, look at that text. It's got a lot of vocabulary in it. Le papier a-t-il un avenir dans le futur de la presse? And then traduisez ce passage en français, the printed press. And then you can translate that into French. It's written in English for you, and it's on page 81, Unit 5, les médias. Now, and then you have another translation over here. Help for a victim of bullying. And you translate that into English. And then you have the vocabulary for Unit 5. Now, Unit 6, Festivals and Traditions. Look at this. And then another text. Ramadan in France. On page 90. Unit 6, les festivals et les traditions. Okay, so you can do that in your own time. Now look at this text. You can read it in your own time. I'm just going through what's on each page. And then next translation over here, local festivals, authentic or not, on page 94, Unit 6, les festivals et les traditions. Now, look at this text. You can read it in your own time. And so it's this, you can read that in your own time. And then here's another translation you can do in your own time. Most of them are quite challenging, to be honest, but at least try them and see how well you do. I don't think I did too well in them. I translated them 50-50, I think, because I sometimes struggle with doing translations depending on how challenging they are. But that's not always the case with me, because in general I'm good at learning languages like French, Spanish and Italian. So, look at the vocabulary for this unit. And then, littérature et film. We'll have a break from the curriculum and we'll go through the literary works. Les 400 coups. And then you have a text here. Une enfance malheureuse. Then you have Un sac de billes, which I studied. Être juif pendant la guerre. And then you have Le château de ma mère, which I've seen. Au revoir les enfants, which I was gifted for a birthday, although I didn't necessarily study it. And then you have La Place, then the text here. And then Le blé en herbe, and then a text here. And then Les choristes, which I've seen, and I believe I wrote about as well. And then you have a text here. Boule de Suif, I think I was gifted that as well. And here's the text about it. And then Noi et moi, which I think I've heard of. And here's the text on it. Intouchable. And then the text on it. La vie en rose, which I've seen. And here's the text on it. Le dernier métro, and the text. La haine, which I studied and I've watched. And there's a text on it. L'étranger, and the text on it. Entre les murs, and the text on it. Le gant du Shabbat, and the text on it. Les petites enfants du siècle, and a text on it. And you have some vocabulary listed in there. Thérèse Desqueroux, then a text on it. And then, this is information about writing an AS essay. But don't worry too much about that, because I don't expect you to write an AS or A-level essay after watching this video. I just wanted to introduce you to the course, that's all. Now, Unit 7, l'impact positif de l'immigration en France. Now, more units to cover. Look at these texts. And then you can have a go at this translation over here. Let's check if there was no translation here. We won't do that translation, just the ones that mention that they're translations. So that one you can translate into English in your own time. Now, look at this text. And then you can translate this paragraph into English as well. And here's the text on this unit. And another translation you can do. I won't say the page numbers and units for all of them, because I'll just show you what they are. But I started off doing that. Here's a vocabulary for the unit. And then Unit 8 you have. And then some text over here. And then another translation in there into French. You can have a go at that if you want. And then the text over here. Feel free to have a look at it if you want. And then the text over here. Feel free to have a look at that if you want. And then you have another translation into English, Everyone Against Racism. You can have a go at that if you wish to. And then here's a vocabulary for Unit 8. And then Unit 9. You have a text here. And then another translation over here, the FN logo. And you translate that into English. Then you have a text here. And then a text to translate into English, the National Front Youth. So you translate that into English. Now, this is about Marine Le Pen. It might be interesting. I don't know what you'd think of it. Now, another translation into French. And then the vocabulary for Unit 9. Recherche personnelle et présentation. We might not go through this. Let's skip it, shall we? Now, Unit 10. You have a text over here. And a translation over here. A text over here. And a translation over here. Text. Translation. Unit 10 vocabulary. Unit 11. So you have text here, translation over here, then a text over here, and the translation over here, and then another text over here, and Unit 11 vocabulary over here. Unit 12. We're approaching the end of the book now. So, you have a text over here, and a text over here, and a text over here. Oh, excusez-moi. Need to move the textbook on the table so it doesn't fall down. So, and you have a translation over here, and vocabulary for Unit 12. And then Unit 13, which is a recap on everything. Let's see if there are, there are some translations to do here as well. Here's one you can do in your own time. So, a text over here and over here. Let's not do that translation because it seems like the most challenging one. So, you have this, and then you have this translation. It's quite long, but I'm sure you can manage if you're keen on doing long translations. And then vocabulary for Unit 13. And then we have approached the end of the textbook. So, thank you very much for listening.